What's up guys? In today's video, I'm going to show you how to refletch your arrows at home so you can turn your arrows that look and perform like this into arrows that look and perform like this. So let's get into it. Smoke show. Okay, so to start off, you're going to need, you can do this a couple different ways. I really recommend getting an arrow stripper. This is the boning version where you can take this out, replace this little blade, but it's a little notched blade, so you're a lot less likely to cut into your arrow while you're doing this. These arrows right here, a buddy of mine brought them to me to refletch. Now he runs his cock vane out. I'm more of a fan of running my cock vane up because I believe that that's how your arrows were built to run. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna run that cock vane up. So we're gonna get that centered on the spine of the arrow. Now these arrows aren't marked. I personally started running Victory archery arrows last season and absolutely fell in love with them. Not even running the elite or whatever they're called, just running the mid-level, not the gamer, but the mid-level straightness. They are phenomenal. They come spine aligned from the factory, elk shape, MFJJ, all those guys have done reviews on them. They've done the straightness test on them, the spine testing. They come with the marking on the shaft of the arrow already, which is super nice for this exact reason. When that's there, you don't ever have to worry about trying to float your arrow and find the spine. These arrows, this guy has the stock insert in them. So, you know, if this was me, I would go ahead and take the stock insert out, take the knockout, strip the arrow down, and I would actually float this arrow to see where the spine is, just because these arrows don't come stock with, you know, any spine indication on them at all. So, but we're going off the stock cock vane on this one. So, we're going to line that up, and that's where we're going to set our nock. We're going to go ahead and strip off all of these existing fletchings. When you're doing this, you really want to make sure that you are conscious not to dig into the carbon on the arrow. Now, using this tool, it's likely not going to happen, but you just want to make sure that you're not digging into that carbon, because once that carbon's gone, you can't add any more. You just got to go get another arrow, which arrows are expensive, so you don't want to really have to do that. I use the side stripper, or the front stripper right here, whenever I'm peeling that fletching off. And then once I have all of that fletching off, I use this side one right here, and I go down and I'll just kind of scrape the rest of the glue off. That way you can get a little bit closer to the shaft and take all that glue off, so you don't have to sand as much off. You don't want to have to sand a whole lot on these, so get as much as you can off the scraper without going too far into the arrow, and it should look something like that. So you can see we didn't dig into the carbon at all. We just knocked the majority of that glue off. So now what you're going to need to do is get you a little tiny piece of sandpaper. This is 60 grit. It's pretty coarse. If you're new, you might not want to use such high grit, but if you are careful and you know what to look for, you can use this higher grit. It works a little bit faster, but really all you need for this is like I would say 120, 180 even 220. You're just trying to knock any of that leftover glue down and get straight back down to carbon, but you do not want to sand any of this carbon down because you only have so much, and you can't put, there's no more carbon. Once you start getting rid of it, you're going to create a weak point in the arrow, and you don't want to do that. So you just want to lightly sand this arrow shaft just to knock off any excess glue and also some of the varnish so your wrap and your arrows stick better. So we're going to sand it very lightly, just kind of cup the sandpaper, and then you can rotate the arrow while also going up and down. You're just trying to knock off any little high spots. You don't want to sand too much. Yep, see that right there is perfect. Okay, so now that we have that done, we're going to take this junk off the table. And you're going to need a rag and a little bit of acetone. I just put a little acetone in a spray bottle just so it makes this a little bit easier. A lot of guys have been concerned with using acetone for arrows, which is totally correct. You should be concerned, and you should not use acetone for arrows if you're going to soak the arrow in it. You do not want to soak an arrow into this acetone for long at all. The only thing you want to do is spray it on a rag and wipe it down just to knock off any of that carbon dust that you've just put on there and any oil and grease or anything like that that's going to cause that wrap not to stick very good. A couple hits with an acetone rag just to knock any of that stuff off. That's what your arrow should look like. You can see it's nice and slick. There's nothing at all on it. Now we're going to start getting ready to refletch this arrow. So another thing I highly recommend. This is the Nock On Archery wrap pad. John Dudley over there at Nock On, super great guy. I love watching all of his videos. Super knowledgeable about archery. He's been doing it a long time. Sells a lot of arrow wraps and vanes and things he uses. So definitely go check him out. But this little wrap pad is just a really nice work surface. Just something clean that you can use. But I'll show you why this wrap pad's important in just a second. What we're going to use this for is putting on our arrow wrap. Now, you want to make sure that you align this correctly. So you want to, as you can see, there's a diagram that shows the wrap surface, where to put the wrap and then also where to put the arrow blank. So what you want to do is take your wrap, set it down where it's supposed to go, and then set your arrow down where it's supposed to go. Make sure it's going to line up with the nock. Take it, push down, and then roll forward. And then roll back and forth a few times. And what this pad does, if I was to roll this arrow on this table, there's voids and stuff in this wood. It's not perfectly flat. This wrap pad compresses down to where it sucks to all the layers and edges of this wrap and arrow. So you want to compress this down, roll it, make sure it's stuck on there really good, and it should just look like that. That looks great. Once that's done, we're ready to start putting our fletchings on this arrow. Okay, so in this video, we're going to be using the tack driver vanes, 2.75s. These vanes, I used these vanes all last season, hunting public land in Louisiana. Shot a few deer with them, and they worked pretty amazing. What shocks me about them is how quiet they are flying through the air. I like to shoot longer range, so whenever I shoot these arrows at a distance, I can hear them flying through the air. With like boning blazer vanes, I can hear those, zipping through the air. These, I can't hear that. They are incredibly quiet, and I can also run them at a lot bigger helical, an offset. Even with the offset and the bigger helical, they still are quieter than a lot of the other vanes on the market. So what I'm using for this is the tack prep pin, probably just acetone in it, but it's recommended to use this whenever you're using tack vanes. It's also recommended to use tack glue when you're using tack vanes, but I am not using tack glue. I am actually using a Max Bond. This works just as good if used correctly with the tack primer pin. This glue works just as good, and this is just what I had readily available. All right, so what you're gonna do, we're ready. This is lined up. You need to make sure that once you dial in your offset and everything, your cock vane is gonna be ready to go, which mine is. It's centered up here. So what you wanna do is dab this a little bit to get a little juice flowing out of it, you're going to wipe this down the seat of the vein, and then you're going to let that sit just for a second. You want to take your glue, and I like to put about 8 to 10 drops on a vein. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So, and then you can take your glue and you can spread it out thin all down the vein. You don't want it too thick because you're going to ooze out everywhere and make a giant mess. So you don't want to do that. You're going to take your vein carefully that has glue in it, and you're going to press it into your vein holder. And I like to set mine just when I eyeball it, it gets right up to the end. That way I know it's going to be about the same every time I put one of these in. So once that's done, you go ahead and slide this, squeeze that down, and you can watch that glue just ooze out of the middle. And you're going to want to hold this for about 15 seconds. All right, once that's done, I like to leave everything oriented the exact same. And now you're going to want to check to make sure that this seated correctly, especially with these tack vanes, because these are notorious for wanting to pop up on you. So what I like to do is I take it off and I just compress down the end of it, and you'll see a little bit of glue come out down there. That's okay. And I do the same thing down here at the tail end. Push it down and I'll see a little bit of glue squeeze out just a little bit, and then you can let go and our first vein is done. And you can see that's an extreme helical for a tack vane. 2.5 inch tack vane, that's an extreme helical. Now that that's done, we can put that back in there. We can go over the next one. It's going to be right here, and we're going to repeat the process. Grab a vane, grab our primer pen, dab a little bit to where you see it come out, wipe it in the seat of the vane, the saddle of the vane, get that base good and clean, any oil and debris out of there. That acetone will evaporate and dry out really good and quick, so you want to do that. You want to make sure you're ready to go when this is coming, so pull that out, and now we'll take our glue and we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And again, we're going to take that, spread it, so you got a nice thin, even coating on the seat of this vane, and everything's coated to where you don't have any air gaps whenever you go to seat this vane. Pull that back down into the holder, pull it to where it needs to be. Always remember to rotate this, but once that's there, you can compress that down and you're holding it again. Alright, so this is when I'm going to take it out again, and I'm going to double check to make sure both ends are seated good, because that is a pretty heavy helical for a 2 3/4 inch tack vane. That one's good. This one down here is pretty good, but I'm still going to hold it on just for a second to make sure, because once it's in there, it is in there. So we got 2 done. We got 1 more to do. Alright, so I wanted to show you guys one last angle while we do this last vane, just so you can see kind of the whole process. But one other important step while you're doing this, keep your little paper towel on the side. Some guys use Q-tips to do this, but I don't really like using Q-tips, because once that Q-tip touches this glue is going to shock and it's going to start hardening. So a lot of times those little fibers will get stuck in it, and it just makes it kind of messy. So I take a paper towel and I just bend it to where I have just the sharp edge of the paper towel. And what I do is I just wipe the excess glue right off the edge of that vane. And then I'll fold it again to where I got another sharp edge, and I just wipe the excess glue off the edge of this vane. I get all the edges of the veins where any of that glue is pulled up. That way you have a nice crisp look on all of your veins. So super important, don't forget to do that. But we'll get this put back into the Vane Master Pro, and we'll go over to the last setting. We'll pull this out and get it ready off to the side, and we'll get 1 more of our tack vanes. We're going to take our primer pen, dab a little bit to where we can see it wet, and we're going to wipe the base of this vane and blow that dry. We're going to take our glue, and you're going to dab 8 to 10 little dots. Now I'm taking it and I'm lining it up just off a reference point on this holder, just so they're all in the right places. Slide that into place and compress it in. Squeeze it and hold tight for 15-20 seconds. Pop that off. Pull this out. Go ahead and move it over one more time so I know where my cock vane location is. Make sure that this is seated correctly, which it does look like it is. Hold it down, see a little bit more of that glue squeeze out. Do the same thing on this end over here. See what I'm doing, all I'm doing is just pressing down. I'm grabbing the tip of the vane, I'm pressing down just a little bit until I see a little bit more glue squeeze out. And that's making sure that this vane is seated perfectly. Whenever that rest of that glue squeezes out, you're only left with a thin layer. It's going to harden a lot quicker. So when you let go of it, it's seated on there and you're good to go. Now you're going to take your paper towel again and wipe off just a tiny little bit. Look, this right here, this tiny little bit of excess on this vane right here, that is all the excess that you want to see. If you have any more than that, you're using too much glue and you're wasting too much glue. And it's not a big problem as far as wasting the glue, because you can always just get more glue if you want. But the problem is you're not going to get as clean of a finished product because you're going to have glue everywhere and a big sticky mess on your hands. So you don't want that. So make sure you're using the right amount of glue. Again, like I said, on these tack drivers, I'm using 8 to 10 spots and then blending it all in. Now that that's done, we have a perfectly symmetrical fletched arrow. The last step you want to do whenever you're fletching your arrows is take a long cure glue. I'm using this Fletch Tight. It's a 48-hour cure time total. And what you want to do is just take a little tiny bit, little tiny dot, and put it right on the tip and tail of your arrow. I believe Dudley calls this tipping and tailing. Makes sense because that's where it's going. But you just want to put a little tiny dab right on the tip and tail of this arrow fletching, and that's going to really lock in the main pressure points on these fletchings. So where the air is hitting the fletching and it's trying to peel it off as it's flying through the air, it's not going to allow it to do that if you have this strong glue on here. And I've buried these arrow vanes into foam, shot deer with them, and I have had 0 problems. So realign with your cock vane, with your knock, and now you're good to go. So this is what you are shooting for. This is a really nice helical. So that's it. We'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.